For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. You ever have that feeling where you want to do something, but you're only going to do it if you are able to accomplish something else? However, you realize that you're never going to be able to accomplish that feat, so you just give up and you cave in? I'll give you an example. Let's say you try to incentivize yourself to lose weight through food, because you need some sort of motivation. You say to yourself, I'm not going to have another hamburger until I run for an hour on the treadmill. I'm going to reward myself with a hamburger the moment that I'm able to complete an hour-long workout on the treadmill. But until I do that, no more hamburgers for me. So you get on the treadmill, and every time you get on, you're winded after 10 or 15 minutes. Very quickly, you realize that you might never be able to have another hamburger again. So you decide to say, screw this, I'm getting myself a hamburger. And you completely abandon the original goal and the original incentive, knowing that you might never be able to reach it. In other words, you gave up. You set a goal for yourself, you realized it was going to take a while or that it was unattainable in the near future, and you just said, screw it, I'm caving in. Speaking of goals, one of my goals is to hit 60,000 subscribers on the channel, so be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a moment of the action. We're trying to build the best football community on the platform to talk all things NFL history all the time. Thanks so much in advance for your support. Well, I bring that hypothetical up because that's exactly what happened in 1988 to the man that you've been watching this whole time. Green Bay Packers head coach Lindy Infante. During the 1988 season, the first-year head coach and former offensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns decided to do something to motivate his team to win a game, and decided to reward them with a little bit of a sweet treat for their winning efforts. However, once it became very apparent that this team was bad and was not winning anything anytime soon, Infante just gave up and reversed course, in an insane story about a coach not having any faith in his players to win one singular game. Because this is the story behind Green Bay Packers head coach Lindy Infante, the 1988 installment of the team, and donuts. Yes, donuts. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and how exactly it played out, we need some context to understand who this man right here, Lindy Infante, was, and what he tried to do before realizing that this would be a disaster and a lost cause. The year is 1988, and after 5 straight seasons without a playoff appearance, including the last 4 without a winning record under head coach Forrest Gregg, the Packers decided to go in a different direction and hired this man, Lindy Infante, as in the offensive coordinator of the AFC Championship finalist Cleveland Browns for the last 2 seasons. No, unlike the Colts, they did not hang a banner for that. When Infante got to Green Bay, he obviously knew that he had his work cut out for him. Over the past 2 seasons, Green Bay was one of the worst teams in football, as in 1986 and 1987 combined, the team won just 9 out of the possible 31 games, posting a winning percentage somewhere around 30%. No one was expecting much out of Green Bay during that 1988 campaign. Their odds to win the Super Bowl were plus 7,500, which was the 5th worst odds in football. But Infante wanted to do something to try and motivate his men, even if it was something small. Who doesn't love donuts? Whether it's Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kreme or your local bakery, donuts are awesome. Heck, I know that for me, personally, if I just got off of a long flight and I'm waiting for my bags and I see a Dunkin' Donuts and baggage claim, I'm waiting in line to devour one of those things. Put a box of Munchkins in front of me, and I have zero impulse control whatsoever. What I'm saying is that donuts are awesome. And because Lindy Infante is human, he realized this. So, he decided that he was going to use donuts as a way to motivate his team. He made a deal with this team. I will personally buy all of you donuts at practice the moment you win a game. Get that first win under your belt, and we're celebrating with donuts. In other words, Infante was treating his team like it was made up of 50-some-odd Homer Simpsons. Pretty harmless thing, and obviously, some pretty good motivation. Is it the main thing on your mind when you're going out on the football field? Obviously not. You're playing to win the game and earn your pay and help out your teammates, but having donuts as an added incentive definitely doesn't hurt. And Infante probably thought that the Packers were going to make him pay sooner rather than later. 3 of the team's first 5 games to start off the 1988 season were at home, and 3 of the team's first 5 games were against teams who had losing records, including 2 games against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as in the laughingstock of the NFL over the mid-80s, and a team that was 8-39 over the last 3 seasons. Instead, Infante was sorely mistaken, because through the first 5 games of the season, the Packers were looking like the worst team in football. Infante's donut promise was put on hold for weeks, and honestly, it seemed as though the Packers might go winless, or at least have a decent chance to do so. After 5 weeks, the Packers were sitting at 0-5, following a 34-7 loss on opening day to the Los Angeles Rams, 2 losses to the Buccaneers where both times they lost by 3 points on a walk-off field goal with no time left, a loss against the Miami Dolphins where they never led at any point, and a loss against the division rival Chicago Bears where the Bears scored the final 24 points of the contest. There were 28 teams in the NFL in 1988. 27 of those teams had at least 1 win under their belt after 5 weeks. The lone exception? None other than the Green Bay Packers, who boasted the worst point differential in the NFL at -58, and the worst offense in the NFC, and the second worst offense in the NFL at 64 points, or a mere 12.7 points per game. I want to give you some perspective on just how bad the Packers were to start off that 1988 campaign of theirs, as if these lowlights were not enough. Here's a look at every team in the NFL and their point differential through the first 5 weeks of the season. See that outlier in the red bar? That bar that seems like it's tunneling underground more than any other team? Yep, that's Green Bay. And it's not as though Green Bay's schedule got any easier in the coming weeks. They had a game against the New England Patriots up next, as in a team that hadn't finished below 500 since 1981. After that was a game on the road against the Minnesota Vikings, a team that made it to the NFC Championship the year before and had just destroyed the Chicago Bears, as in the team that the Packers got destroyed by. After that was a game against Washington, the reigning Super Bowl champion, followed by a game against Buffalo, who was 4-1 to start off the season through 5 weeks. On paper, there was a legitimate, and heck, a highly likely chance that the Packers would start the season off 0-9. There were no quote-unquote winnable games until their Week 10 meeting against the Atlanta Falcons. In every single game for the next month, the Packers were going to be heavy underdogs, and no one was giving them a chance at winning. So, prior to this game right here against the New England Patriots that you're watching right now, Infante decided, screw it, we're not winning anytime soon. And on Saturday, October 8th, 1 day before the game against the Patriots, Infante decided to change his rules and decided to buy his team donuts. He bought 18 dozen donuts, or 216 donuts, which comes out to around 4 to 5 donuts per player, and is a fair amount of money. Today, if you were going to do that, it would probably run you somewhere in the ballpark of $250 to $300. When asked about it in the press, he even admitted that he did this because he felt as though the players were never going to get that opportunity. He said, I said, shoot, we may never get there. I'll go ahead and buy. So prior to that game against the Patriots, he officially threw in the towel and gave up. I want to buy you guys donuts as a reward for winning a game, but we might not win a single game this season, so screw it. Here you go. Have at it. And what's crazy is that by throwing in the towel and giving up, as you've been watching for the last minute, the Packers actually played their best football of the season. Obviously, the donuts were not the reason that they played lights out in that game against the Patriots. but this was one of the best performances ever by the Packers. No exaggeration. You could legitimately make the argument that in the post-Lombardi era, this was the most dominant win by Green Bay at the time, because when all was said and done, the Packers won the game by a final score of 45-3. In fact, the 42-point margin of victory was their highest since 1967, when they had a game against the Cleveland Browns at 155-7. It was their highest margin in the post-merger era. Everything that could have gone right for the Packers on this day did. If the first 5 weeks were weeks where everything was going wrong, this was the week where everything was going right. After the Patriots led 3-0 after the first quarter, Green Bay scored the final 45 points of the contest. Green Bay never turned the ball over once, while forcing New England to turn it over 5 times. And most of the time, if you have a +5 turnover margin, you're going to win the game. Running back Brent Fullwood had maybe his best game as a pro, running the ball 14 times for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns, all while averaging over 8.4 yards per carry. And quarterback Don Majkowski, who would take the NFL by storm 1 year later, showed flashes of being that quarterback here, as he went 18 for 26, completing a very nice 69% of his passes for 210 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. Green Bay held onto the ball for over 34 minutes, absolutely dominating the time of possession. And defensively, the Packers put on a clinic, especially in the passing game. For the Patriots, Doug Flutie got the start, and he was terrible, going 17 for 33 with no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 27.7, which is worse than if he did nothing but spiked the ball into the ground on every single play. In fact, he was so bad that at one point, he was pulled for the veteran Steve Grogan. But Grogan was even worse, going 2 for 7 with no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 6.5. So head coach Raymond Berry benched Grogan to put Flutie back in there. That's when you know it's a rough day. When you bench the starting quarterback for being bad, but the backup is even worse. So you reinsert the starter. And after this game right here, the story was, sure enough, the donuts. Said Infante, I told the team in the locker room, I didn't know they were that cheap. If all it would take is buying them donuts, shoot, I buy them every week. That was the winning edge, obviously, the donuts. As for where he got the donuts, Infante got them at the Stadium Bakery, which no longer exists, but was roughly 3 miles away from Lambeau Field. And the bakery played into this as well, putting out a sign after the game saying, guess where Lindy got the donuts? Infante even added, I told them that I'd buy because it looked like they were afraid to win so they wouldn't have to charge me for the donuts. That was definitely the difference. I'll buy them every week. It gave us the winning edge. Turns out, by giving up, Infante actually helped provide a spark to his team. Now, as for what happened afterwards with the incident involving this team behind me right here, the Green Bay Packers, I don't think I'm revealing anything crazy when I say that the 1988 season was an absolute disaster for the Pack. They finished the season with a 4-12 record, and at one point, they were 2-12 and were actually in pole position to get the number 1 pick of the 1989 NFL Draft and acquire UCLA quarterback Troy Aikman. History would have changed a ton if that was the case. Can you imagine the butterfly effect that would have caused? Anyways, that 45-point performance against the Patriots was a complete anomaly for the team that finished in the bottom half, or near the bottom, I should say, of the NFL in every major statistical category from an offensive standpoint. They even got shut out 3 times in the remaining games after that Patriots blowout. So they were really, really bad on offense. But on this day against New England, they did not lay a donut in the score column. Partly because they literally got donuts. I honestly don't know what the moral of the story is here, or what the grand takeaway should be. Infante clearly gave up, and thought his team would never be able to win another game that season, and even said as much. So he abandoned his strategy and just decided to reward the team without having them accomplish anything, which is the complete wrong message for people who might be watching. But on the other hand, it worked. And you can't exactly fault a winning strategy. So I have no idea what to make of this. Draw your own conclusions. Either way, when it came to this game right here, the Packers absolutely dominated. And obviously, while the donuts were not the only reason and the main reason why they won the game, as they did implement things like the shotgun for the first time all season, the donuts definitely didn't hurt. Because in 1988, Lindy Infante baked up something good, both on the field and quite literally at the bakery. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.